So if you can't tell, I really like Superman. He's my favorite superhero of all time, and we have a new Superman movie to talk about today. And that's what I'm doing. Not normally something I do on the channel, but we're going to be reviewing the new Superman movie. Was called Superman Legacy at one point, and then its name changed to just Superman. I'll just refer to it as James Gunn's Superman throughout the duration of this review. First things first, I'm just going to get this out of the way. I loved the movie. I loved the movie so much. I've only seen it once so far, and it's definitely my top 3 favorite Superman movies. Maybe even top 2, maybe even number 1. I'll only know after I see it a couple more times. But that's getting that out of the way early. I loved this movie, so if that's all you wanted to know, there you go. But I hope you stick through for the rest of the review, because I have a lot to talk about as a lifelong Superman fan. So a couple things I want to touch on before we get into the review proper, just some things that don't really impact the story of the movie or anything like that. They're not really part of the review, but just things that have been circulating online that I want to make my opinions known on. Firstly, is this movie super woke and pro-Palestine? Yes! When I heard this movie was anti-Israel, I was like, okay, there's no way it's actually going to be. And then I watched the movie. And we'll get into that in the spoiler aspect of the movie, but yeah, I'm just letting you know now. This movie is very pro-Palestine, and I view that as a good thing. And it is all about kindness and hope and being a good person. So it is very much a good Superman movie. Other thing to cover is this movie for the Snyder Bros? If you only like Zack Snyder's version of Superman, then no. I liked Man of Steel. I thought it was a good movie. I liked Zack Snyder's Justice League. Batman v Superman, I could take or leave, but I didn't mind Zack Snyder's version of Superman. It's not the normal Superman. That is not the standard Superman. It was an outlier. James Gunn's Superman is more like the traditional standard comic book version of Superman, and that is a damn good thing. It's real good. And that is the last time I will bring up Zack Snyder in any regard or Man of Steel. So there it is. So spoiler-free section of this is just basically going to be saying if something is good or not, like general consensus. And then I'll have my spoilery thoughts and kind of like going through the story afterwards. So story overall, I give that like a solid 9 out of 10. It was a very cohesive, well thought out story from beginning to end. Not really a lot of plot holes that I could see, or any really, and it was a good time. It was a really, really good story. Characters, I love all the characters. In particular, my favorites were Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane and David Corenswet as Superman. His last name gives me a hard time. I have a hard time with his last name, but he's a great Superman. He's an even better Clark Kent, which is what we needed in this movie. He's a phenomenal Clark Kent. And Rachel Brosnahan is probably the best Lois Lane we've had since Margot Kidder. So, no offense to Amy Adams, but yeah, this Lois Lane is much better. The rest of the supporting cast, they pretty much hit the nail on the head with everyone at the Daily Planet. In particular, Jimmy Olsen was really good. The other superheroes in the movie, Mr. Terrific, I expected him to be my least favorite of the 3, and he was my favorite. Guy Gardner was good. Nathan Fillion does a great job there. And Hawkgirl was fine. She just didn't really get a lot of screen time. And that's actually something I kind of like. The other superheroes didn't like overstay their welcome. They were there for when they needed to be there, and that was it. And I really actually did appreciate that. Nicholas Hoult is a phenomenal Lex Luthor. Like, man, is he a good Lex Luthor. They got great actors from Ma and Pa Kent. I was surprised to see Bradley Cooper is Jor-El, Superman's birth father. That was an interesting thing to see. Yeah, the cast, great. The action was good. That is the one thing, I know I said I wasn't going to bring up Zack Snyder again, but that's the one thing Man of Steel definitely did better in this movie, was the action scenes. But then again, Man of Steel was more of an action movie first and a Superman movie second, and this movie is a Superman movie first and an action movie second, which I prefer. But the action scenes aren't bad. They're actually really well done. It's just like they're not as over the top, and they don't feel as like impactful as the ones in Man of Steel. But then again, that's the one thing Zack Snyder can do well, is action scenes, so give him his credit there. Music was good. The main theme was phenomenal, but the other accompanying tracks besides the main theme were just, they were fine. They were fine. Yeah, overall, spoiler-free thoughts. This movie is a solid 9.5 out of 10 for me right now. I have to get a couple more watch-throughs to see if that score goes up or down. But I really enjoyed it. It was a really good Superman movie, and I highly recommend anyone who's a fan of Superman or DC Comics go check this movie out. It's really good. All right, we're talking spoilers now. So if you don't want to see spoilers or you haven't seen the movie, click away and come back after you've seen the movie. So in 3, 2, 1. So I'm not going to go over the entire plot of the movie because that would be kind of pointless, as there's probably other videos that are just breakdowns, but I'm going to go over things that I thought were really cool and interesting and things that I thought maybe didn't work as well, which there's not very many of those. First things first, the Moravia-Duran-Pur conflict is straight up Israel-Palestine, and James Gunn made it very clear where he stands, and I stand in the same position. If Superman were real, he'd be defending Gaza from Israel. We're just going to nip that in the bud right now. If you think otherwise, you don't know anything about Superman. But the way they orchestrate this is actually kind of interesting because it's like Lex Luthor is kind of behind it along with the president of Moravia, and it's kind of a cool concept. We also get to see the Forces of Solitude. It looks a lot like it did in the original Superman movie, which I like. They also have the fun thing like from the comics where it comes out of the ground so that it's hidden when Superman isn't there, right? Or he doesn't want access to it. Cool thing I did like is when Superman is healing, the yellow sun is hitting him, and he's in pain when he's healing because he's got broken bones that are snapping back into place. I love Krypto too, by the way. Krypto is an absolute menace in this movie. He is a very bad dog, but he is... I love him so much. I just love Krypto. And we actually do get to see a fun way of having Superman be beat. Apparently Lex Luthor has been studying his moves for 3 years, so he is feeding like commands into the mic of, or the headset of this Hammer of Bravia, who we then find out is actually a superhero called Ultraman that works for Lex Luthor. There's another superhero, or supervillain, I can't really remember her name, but she uses like nanotechnology, and she actually finds the Fortress of Solitude, but it's like, I can't get in. So Lex Luthor decides he's going to distract Superman with like a kaiju and then go in. But that's a little bit later. We do get to see everyone at the Daily Planet, and I fucking love that Jimmy Olsen is a big doofus, but for some reason every woman in the DC universe wants to fuck him, except Lois Lane. It's great. But all of your usual Daily Planet people are there, and they are, as you would expect them from the comics. We got Perry White, we got Cat Grant, like I said, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, Clark Kent, and also David just knocks it out of the park as goofy-ass Clark Kent. He's fucking perfect. We do have Lombard. Lombard's not really in the movie much. He like maybe has 4 lines of dialogue, but only like diehard Superman fans even really give a shit about him, so it's whatever. And then we do get to see a little bit of Clark Kent and Lois Lane having already been a couple for a few months. Clark Kent apparently likes breakfast for dinner and forces that lifestyle onto Lois Lane. I'm not gonna say I agree with you, Clark, but it's worse things you can have for dinner. And then we have the interview scene that was like shown in all the trailers. I really like this scene because it really shows that Superman does not care about laws, nations. Like, he even says, I'm not representing anybody when Lois is grilling him. It's like, okay, well, it seems like you represent the U.S. Maybe you shouldn't have gone in and, like, stopped a war. And he's like, I did stop a war. And he's like, I wasn't representing everybody. I was doing what's right. And she keeps grilling him, and he says, people were going to die. And that moment really encapsulates for me that this was going to be a good Superman movie. Because that's all Superman cared about. That innocent people were going to get hurt because somebody with bigger guns wanted their land. There's also a fun thing he talks about how he had a meeting with the president of Moravia by taking him out into a desert and pushing him against a cactus. I've seen some other reviewers who've been like, oh yeah, Superman tortures people. And I'm like, you guys are fucking stupid. It's all the Snyder fanboys saying that shit. Like, Lois Lane said something similar. She's like, oh, so you tortured him? He's like, I didn't torture him. But they have a big fight, and it actually kind of seems like they might break up. And then Clark leaves, and we don't get to see a lot more of Superman as like goofy Clark, but we do get to see him as Clark. There is a really funny scene at the Daily Planet where Clark's parents are calling him on speaker, and his mom is like yelling into the phone, thinking that's how it works, because he's a millennial with boomer parents, and it's so perfect. Then we see Lex Luthor and Ultraman and the other girl. They are heading towards the Fortress of Solitude, and she's like, "How are you going to get in?" And they just walk up, and it just opens. And anyone who's read comics knows exactly why they were able to get in, because the fortress is keyed to Superman's DNA, which Superman then says later when he comes back to the fortress and sees it all messed up. And basically, these two just take out the Superman robots no problem. Krypto gives them a little trouble, but the nanite girl is able to, like, kind of pacify Krypto. And she hurt Krypto, so she's on the shit list, because you don't hurt the puppy. There is one little nitpick I have about the scene. So she gets into Superman's computer to try to find something they can use to turn everyone against them. Because there was a scene earlier that I kind of glossed over or didn't even mention at all, where Lex Luthor like goes to the military and he's like, "Let me arrest Superman." And the military's like, "No, we have no reason to think that he is going to harm us in any way." And Lex Luthor's like, "I'll find it." And it's very clear that Rick Flag shows up. And the rest of the military, they're just like, Lex Luthor's a fucking piece of shit, but whatever. Let's see what he has. And then fast forward back to where we were. There's this thing that she's able to do when she gets into the computer. She finds the message from Superman's parents, right? And as she sees it, she's like, "Oh, it's corrupted, but I think I can fix the other half and like restore it." And I'm like, how are you able to do that when the Superman robots weren't just using nanotechnology? That part doesn't make as much sense to me. I think it would have been more sense if she's like, "I can extract it and then we can try to fix it later." Because I totally believe Lex Luthor being able to do that. I don't believe her being able to do that. But that's a minor nitpick. And while they're in there, she's like, "Well, what if Superman comes back? He's going to stop us." And Lex is like, "I arranged a distraction." The distraction is a kaiju that starts this big and ends up being as big as the buildings. And throughout the whole fight with the kaiju, Superman is like easily able to catch it and like stop it from hitting people and like move its whole weight with ease. But then anytime he punches it, it barely moves. And it's made clear why, after a little bit, why he's not just pummeling this thing. It's because he's intentionally trying not to kill it. He's trying to catch it and like take it to like an interplanetary zoo or something, or like they can study it. He says as much when the other superheroes, who are calling themselves the Justice Gang, it's a fun little thing that like Green Lantern is like, "Oh, we're the Justice Gang," and then Hawkgirl's like, "No, we're not. And we're not calling ourselves that." And Mr. Terrific's like, "Nope, definitely not." But it's a fun little scene, and Mr. Terrific flies over to Superman, and I like the scene. He's like, "All right, so what's going on?" And Superman's like, "It's hides hard, da-da-da, you need to find another way to go through it so we can pacify it." And Mr. Terrific just goes, "Man, come on." And then he's like, "All right, let's kill this thing." And they do. They kill it. And Superman's kind of peeved about that. He's like, "Why'd you fucking kill it? We could have kept it alive." And this really shows Superman's character. Like, he saves a squirrel in this scene. I think it's this scene. But he saves a squirrel from a shockwave. But at any time Superman is fighting anyone in this movie, and civilians or like innocent animals are involved, he always makes sure they're okay before he keeps fighting. Like at one point, the kaiju breathes fire on a building. Superman like it's the way he turns around, looks in the building, he's like, "Is everyone okay?" And they're like, "Yeah." And then he turns around and keeps fighting the big monster. And it's like, that's Superman. That's how Superman would do. And I love seeing that on screen. Now, here's where we're going to talk about the big thing that has actually kind of divided the fan base a little bit. There is a reveal publicly that the second half of the message to Superman from his parents, Lex Luthor apparently gets translators, and they like the hundreds of linguists, and they figure it out. And it's that he was not sent here to protect this world. He was sent here to conquer it. And they even say, like, take as many wives as possible so you can, like, rebuild the Kryptonian race, which is a huge departure for how Jor-El and Laura are in the comics and in every other version of Superman. And I kind of like it. It speaks more to make Superman that much better. Because despite that, he still tries to just do the right thing and save people. And I fucking love that for him. It's just such an interesting way to do it. And you can tell he's heartbroken And like after the first half of the message plays, and it's like, oh yeah, and it's like the typical like go to this planet, make the world a better place, and he's just like, what's wrong with that? But then the second part of the message plays, and you can visibly see like David did just such a good job like emoting like Clark's face. You can see the shock and the hurt in his eyes when he hears his birth parents say that, and he goes off to be by his own. People start throwing things at him, and then he has a little confrontation with the Justice gang, and he almost comes to blow with Guy Gardner. But then he realizes where Lex Luthor got it, and he flies off. But I just want to say, some people have been mad about this like change to Jor-El specifically's character. I like it. I think it fleshes Superman out more to go against what he was supposed to do. Almost kind of Goku-like, like originally before they retconned Bardock and everything. Like, Goku was sent to Earth to take it over and kill everyone and sell it to Frieza. Superman in this timeline was sent to Earth to take it over and rebuild the Kryptonian race. Kind of similar to what Zod wanted to do in Man of Steel, funny enough, and in Superman 2. But despite that being what he was supposed to do, like what his parents wanted and everything, he doesn't do that. And he is just good. He's a good person for the sake of being a good person. And he just likes to do the right thing. And I personally think that this little bit of change to the Superman story is a very good thing. But that's just my opinion. And then after that, we get to see Superman goes back to the Fortress of Solitude, sees what happens. He can't find Krypto anywhere, so he goes and confronts Luthor. And we get the scene that was, like, revealed of him, like, where's the dog, Luthor? Like, throwing the table around and everything. And Lex goads him. And weirdly enough, like, this gets put on the internet, but I forgot to mention, like, Lex Luthor has this little bimbo character who's been, like, constantly in the background, like, taking selfies and everything. And that's actually way more important to the plot than a lot of other things, and it's hilarious. But she puts that on the internet, and people are immediately like, Superman's gone berserk. And I'm like, did y'all see the context? Lex Luthor stole his dog. I would be on his side. I'd be like, dude, give him his dog. After that, we have a really both funny and like humanizing scene of Superman flying back into his apartment and sitting and talking with Lois, and they're talking about like how he just wants to do the right thing, like regardless of what his parents said in the second half. And he tells her, I only ever saw the first half of the message. Meanwhile, the Justice Gang are fighting some like interplanetary being outside the window, and Lois Lane's like, should you go help? And he's like, oh no, they've got that handled. That's like small potatoes. It's pretty funny. There's a fun little talk about like, he's like, I'm punk rock. And she's like, you're not punk rock. He's like, I'm punk rock. And she's like, you're so kind and so like wholesome. And he's like, maybe that's the real punk rock, which, funny enough, kind of is the message of the movie in a way. And then he actually goes and turns himself in, and my girlfriend poked me on the shoulder when he said the line of this, and she goes, that's you. And he was like, I'm going to turn myself in so I can see if Luthor takes me where they're holding Krypto. And Lois goes, it's a dog. And he's like, yeah, I know, he's not even a very good dog, but he's alone. And I don't want him to be alone. I need to find him. And it's like, this man is just the sweetest bean. Like he's supposed to be. Like, every time Superman shows up on screen in this movie, or Clark, I was just more and more reassured that we are finally getting that near perfect representation of Superman. So good. So good. I love Henry Cavill physically as Superman, but man, David Corenswet just blows it out of the water compared to that iteration. Anyway, Superman does turn himself in, ends up in a dimensional prison, which I thought they were going to say was the Phantom Zone. I thought they were going to say that Lex Luthor created the Phantom Zone, and we have seen people traveling through this dimension that Lex Luthor apparently created, including the president of Baravia at one point to meet with Lex. So they go into the prison and put Superman in prison with Element Man, who turns his body into kryptonite to keep Superman sick. And this is where you start to see that Lex Luthor really is as villainous as he is in the comics in this movie, because the only reason he does this is because Lex has his son in the prison, who is like an infant baby, and threatens to kill him if Element Man lets Superman go. And then the next time we see Lex Luthor, it's him pointing a gun to the head of a hot dog stand guy who had helped Superman earlier in the movie. And then he plays Russian roulette with him, and the guy's like, "Don't tell him anything, Superman. Don't tell him anything." And Superman is just like, "Luthor, stop!" And Lex straight up shoots this man in the head, and then makes a joke about it and goes, "Thought that would last longer." And then he just looks at Superman and says, "I'm going to bring a new person in here every day until you tell me what I want to know." And he's asking questions that Clark's never going to answer, right? Like, who raised you and stuff like that. And it is a funny little line as he's leaving. He's like, "Maybe I'll go get that reporter you like to talk to so much. Maybe I'll kill Clark Kent." And I'm just like, okay, that's kind of funny. But this actually inspires Element Man to like Superman Go, and I actually really like this because he's heartbroken watching this man die, and he's like, "I didn't do anything," and he's actually able to kind of create a sun, like a mini sun, and Superman does what he promised Element Man he would do. He punches the glass, and the first thing he does is go save that guy's son, and then the most stressful scene in the fucking movie happens as Lex Luthor's goons start shooting at Superman while he's holding a baby. And like Superman is doing everything in his power to keep this baby safe, and he's like struggling to fight these guys because he's trying to keep this baby safe. And meanwhile, while this is happening, we see Lois Lane trying to go and talk to the Justice Gang and like try to get them to come help, and she ends up getting Mr. Terrific to come help. There's also a funny scene where Guy Gardner is like, "Oh yeah, so you know he's Clark," and she's like, "What the fuck, dude? Stop telling people who he is." And then Mr. Terrific steals every scene he's in, by the way. There's this action scene with him. It's great. But anyway, Superman, Element Man, and the baby make it out of the prison with Kryptos' help. Superman is able to apparently, his super breath is so powerful, he's able to push away from a black hole, which is cool. And I know I'm not going over all the crazy details. I'm just kind of summarizing the plot and like talking about the things I liked as I went. I know I said I wasn't going to go over the whole plot, but oops, we're here now. And then this little dimension portal that Luthor created like crumples in on itself, and Mr. Terrific says he's going to stay and stabilize it. And then Superman is like super sick from kryptonite poisoning. So we see Element Man and his son go away, and Lois takes Clark back to his parents. And it's a super sweet scene. Ma and Pa Kent are perfectly cast. Ma Kent is just making sure everyone's taken care of. And there's a really sad scene, and it really affected me because Pa Kent's actor looks exactly like my late grandfather, who was my favorite human being in the world. And he's like holding Clark's face, and he just looks at Lois and he's crying, and he's like, "Is my boy gonna be all right?" And it's like, "Aw." And it's like this dad who like has seen his son fight immense odds, but he's just so worried that he's gonna get hurt. Then we have a really sweet scene with Clark and Pa Kent, where Pa Kent talks about how it's the things you do that make you who you are. It's your actions. It's not who you were born as or anything like that, or where you're from. It's the things you do. And then he's like crying, saying, "I'm so proud of you." And Clark pulls him into a big hug, and I'm like, that's the best scene in the movie. Well, it's not the best scene in the movie, but it made me tear up. There's a scene where in Jaranpur, the Baravians are invading because Superman's been out for a while, and there's these two little Jaranpur kids hold up a flag with the Superman emblem on it. But as this is happening, Lex Luthor creates a fucking dimension split. He opens that portal again, and it starts like splitting the world and creating a new dimension. So he has to go to Metropolis to stop that, but he sends the Justice Gang to go and deal with the Baravian invasion. And there's a fun scene where Hot Girl is like flying through the Baravian president's house, like killing his guards, and then she picks him up and flies him out a window, and he's like, "You won't kill me, you have a soft heart like Superman." And she just pulls him and goes, "I'm not Superman," and throws him to his death. And there were people clapping as the Netanyahu stand-in just got murdered by Hot Girl. It was great. And then, of course, we get the big confrontation between Superman and Luthor's two goons. He takes out the girl pretty easily. I'm not going to go over details. And then it's revealed that Ultraman is actually the Bizarro of this universe. He's a messed up clone of Superman. And there's a fun scene where like he's winning the fight because Luthor is still doing the thing where he's reading off numbers that are certain attacks he's supposed to do, and Superman's losing until Superman realizes these little drones flying around are how Luthor is getting hits in on him, and he tells Crypto, "Get the toy." And Crypto starts breaking all the drones, and then Superman kicks the shit out of Ultraman because Ultraman is just a big dumb lug when he's not being told what to do. And Superman actually knows how to fight to an extent, so he beats the shit out of him. Also, in this big scene where like Metropolis is basically being destroyed, there's a really cool moment where Superman holds up a building until one woman is able to escape. Then he lets the building crumble on him, and he flies up in the dust, turns around to make sure that she got away, and then goes to fight Ultraman, and it's so wholesome. One thing I glossed over that is actually a very important plot point that I'm going to go over now. I just really wanted to go over like that whole string of Superman side of things. Jimmy fucking Olsen being the MVP. So it turns out he and Lois are having a conversation, and she's like, "How is Lex Luthor connected to Bravia and Jaranpur?" So he texts an ex of his who he has saved in his phone as Mutant Toes. And Mutant Toes is apparently Eve, Lex Luthor's bimbo who's been taking selfies the whole time in the movie. And she has got the hots for Jimmy and would rather be with Jimmy than Lex. But she knows that if she ever leaves Lex, he's going to put her in his interdimensional prison. Because when we were there earlier, he had an ex-girlfriend who wrote a blog like shit-talking him. And he locked her in an interdimensional prison because of that. So she knows that would happen, but Jimmy promises her that they'll hang out. And it's like the whole thing is she just wants to spend a weekend with him. And then he finally goes, "Fine, I promise." And Luthor yells at her once. So she runs into the broom closet and starts sending Jimmy all the selfies she's been taking. And Ultraman overhears, so Lex puts her in the prison. But Lex just thinks she was cheating on him with Jimmy by sending the selfies. But as Jimmy and Lois are looking at the selfies, they see she was strategically taking selfies with all of Luthor's important documents and plans, like a map of Jaranpur, which is like split in half with Luthoria and New Baravia, and like literal contracts that he signed with the president of Bravia and stuff in the background. So Lois and Jimmy and Perry write this like scathing article, and they send it as Superman is beating the crap out of Ultraman. He flies in, and him and Luthor are yelling at each other. And Luthor's like, "It doesn't matter. The government gave me permission to kill you. It's not going to be today. Might not be tomorrow, but I will eventually kill you because the world hates you." And then the news gets published that Luthor is the shithead the whole time about everything he's been doing. And there's a really funny line. We get to see Sean Gunn playing Max Lord, who goes, "Liberals and conservatives can finally agree on something. Lex Luthor sucks." Nice Elon Musk dig. James Gunn, I love it. And then there's a real fun scene where Superman has this great speech about how he's just as human as everyone in the room, how he gets sad, he gets scared, he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't know what to do, and he makes mistakes all the time, but that makes him human, and that's his biggest strength, is that he's human. And then he shoves Luthor away, but doesn't hurt him or anything. But Luthor gets up and walks up to him and is threatens him and says, "I'm gonna kill you." And then Crypto just grabs Luthor, starts slamming him around the room like crazy. And a little bit of a point I glossed over that's kind of important. Mr. Terrific is able to stop the dimensional thing, and he's able to put things back the way they were supposed to be. So good job, Mr. Terrific. But just watching Crypto treat Lex Luthor like a dog toy was mwah. And then the movie ends with Superman and Lois saying "I love you" to each other in big smooch. And we get to see Supergirl at the very end. Millie Alcock shows up as Supergirl. Apparently she was off getting drunk on a planet with a red sun, which heavily implies that her movie comes out next year is going to be the Woman of Tomorrow storyline, which is a really good Superman comic, or Supergirl comic. If you haven't read it, go read it. Turns out Crypto's her dog, and she's like, "Where's my dog?" And then Crypto attacks her and starts slamming her into the floor, and she's giggling and laughing as he's doing it. And Superman just goes, "See, this is why he has behavioral issues. She just does not set boundaries." And there's a sweet scene at the end. I didn't mention earlier, when he was getting healed, they played the video of his parents, which was his birth parents talking to him and saying, "It soothes him." And at the end, they say, "Would you like to see the video of your parents? It soothes him." Like the two robots talking to each other. And it's just a montage of his, childhood videos that his parents took. Well, Ma and Pa can't, and it ends with a video of his dad holding him in the air and him doing like the Superman flying, and then it just pans in on his face smiling, and that's how the movie ends. So, you might have noticed, I maybe had one or two nitpicks throughout that entire ramble, but for the most part, I was gushing. That's because this movie's fucking amazing. Everything about this movie, almost everything, I absolutely loved. There was a couple nitpicks that I didn't really like here and there. I didn't even go over the whole plot in every major detail, but I just went over the things that popped into my head as I was talking about it, and I said some things out of order. So I apologize for that if you have ADHD or OCD or anything like that. But I just got excited to talk about the movie, and it's so good. It's so fucking good. Overall, I would say that this is either the best or second best Superman movie I've ever seen, and the only one that is up there with it is the original Superman with Christopher Reeve. I will say that David Corenswet is a much better Superman than Christopher Reeve, in my opinion. Better than Henry Cavill as well. The only Superman I'd say is up there with David Corenswet is Tyler Hoechlin from the TV show Superman and Lois, and that's because he was just pretty much perfect too. I'm so excited for the DCU and everything they are going to have to offer us going forward. I'm excited to see Supergirl coming out next year. Lanterns, which comes out eventually, which apparently Nathan Fillion said he's dropped more F-bombs in that show than in his entire career combined. So that'll be interesting for the Green Lanterns. But yeah, I'm super excited. DC's back, baby. In a big way, DC's back. The damage done to the Superman from Injustice and Zack Snyder can finally be undone. I'm just so happy that we have a Superman that actually feels like the comic book version, who is truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. He is hope. We finally have a reason to look up, everyone. And I know this was kind of a long-winded ramble, and I kind of went off on a lot of things, and it was a less structured review than you might have been expecting. And it was just me sitting in a chair in my Superman costume that I made myself, by the way. Rambling. That's just because I loved this movie. So good. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know how you felt about the movie in the comments below. Did you like it as much as I did? Did you maybe have a few more problems with it than I did? Let me know. Overall, give the movie 9.5 out of 10. David Corenswet himself, 10 out of 10 Superman. 10 out of 10 Superman. And Rachel Brosnan, best Lois Lane we've ever had, except for maybe Margot Kidder. And, oh my god, Nicholas Hoult is without a doubt the best Lex Luthor we've ever had. Like, Gene Hackman, Kevin Spacey, especially Jesse Eisenberg, none of them are anywhere near as good as he is. The guy from Smallville is up there, but yeah. This is just such a good movie and such a good start to the DCU and the Superman story in this universe. And I'm rambling again at this point, but thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you guys on the next video. If you enjoyed, leave a like down below, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see y'all next time.